to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
And welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.TV. Thank you for joining me this evening. We're going to dive a little bit into the latest appointment to come out of the new administration. But many people, even libertarians, were pretty happy that Davos got in, saying that it would shake up things, that there would be school choice, and I hope that all of this is possible. And Thomas Massey has is going to introduce a bill talking about basically abolishing the federal education. And we've talked about it before, and it was funny because I went across Drudge Report and seen one article, and I really don't get too many political articles anymore from Drudge, but there's other articles that they do post. And this one I've seen across Drudge Report was out of WKBW.com. Was Buffalo mom jailed over homeschooling decision? Single mother, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this, it's Kiarre Harris. Care Harris started researching homeschooling last November. She says her two elementary school age children weren't excelling at their failing Buffalo public schools. Quote, I felt the district was failing my children, and that's when I made the decision to homeschool, unquote, she said. Harris says she filed documents at Buffalo City Hall following all the steps, informing the district of her intent to homeschool her children. According to documents she provided to 7 Eyewitness News, they are dated December 7th, and the district says it received her paperwork. I spoke directly to the homeschool coordinator, and she told me from this point on my children were officially unenrolled from school. Things took a turn when she says a week later, CPS called wondering why her kids weren't in school. I told them that my kids were homeschooled now and that I could furnish the documents if they need to see them. Thinking everything was fine, Harris says she went on with her homeschooling, but then less than a month later, she says she was confronted by CPS workers and police. According to Harris, they told her that they had a court order to take her children, and when she told them no, she was arrested for obstruction. She says she hasn't seen her kids in 3 weeks and they've been in a foster institution. The Buffalo Public School District says it cannot comment on this case due to federal laws, but says in order for a parent to file for homeschooling, they must have full custody of their children. Harris says she's a single parent and has always had full custody until her kids were taken away. This case is far from finished. The Buffalo Common Council will be addressing it tomorrow. So we've seen this over and over, that people that try to homeschool or aren't doing what the majority or, you know, the local community sees as a normal way of raising a child. Oh, you guys, you know, live in a cabin in the woods with a wood burner. That's not safe for the children. You know, that type of attitude. And homeschoolers have definitely had a hard time, but what you tend to see out of a lot of homeschool kids is they're years ahead of the public institutions. And I think that's what they fear, because you're not conforming. You're a renegade thinker, you know, and hopefully, you know, with this new appointment, we might see something good where the federal government and also states will be held accountable for these type of actions. You shouldn't dictate the education system, definitely when we see what comes out of public schools. But we have a new appointment that's going a little viral now in mainstream media and alternative media. And this one is actually upsetting many libertarians and constitutionalists and others. Elliot Abrams to State Department. Yeah, that's not making too many people happy. We'll go ahead and start off with the Ron Paul Liberty Report on this. So we'll get into this and then we'll cover a little bit more here after.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams. Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Good. Another day, another report. Let's talk about foreign policy. We hear a story just really started yesterday that a very famous neocon might get a very important position, Deputy Secretary, the Secretary of State.
Yeah.
Wow. And with Tillerson, you know, this is really important because Tillerson, you know, he's been found guilty that he didn't have international experience, which didn't bother us too much. Maybe we needed people like that. So the big thing on the media was you need people with experience. So they found, who did they find? But Elliot Abrams. And there's no doubt he's had some experience, and we know a little bit about him. But the big question is could he possibly be appointed? And there's lots of things fascinating about him. You know, his close relationships with Trump in the not too distant past, and also his positions, which seem like they might even contradict what Trump believes, and also that this appointment to the deputy might be equivalent to being appointed Secretary of State, more so than any other appointment. So this is a big issue, and the people who are unhappy with this have already talking about it. It happens that Senator Rand Paul has started talking about it because he doesn't think that Abrams qualifies for being Secretary of State.
Yeah, it's interesting, you know, and we would say this is just a rumor, but Abrams is meeting Trump today, and there's speculation that he will, name him as his appointee for very, very important position. As you pointed out, and actually Peter Van Buren, who we know, wrote a piece, I think it was last week, essentially saying that under Tillerson, who's pretty laid back, the State Department is going to sort of sink into irrelevance. And with Abrams in charge, that will not be the case. But the question is whether he'll be appointed, or the other trick that might happen is that they may float someone that is so obviously grotesquely neoconservative. When everyone has an uproar, then they'll name someone who's not quite as bad, but almost as bad, and everyone will say, we dodged a bullet. So that's Washington.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what we know about his history and his positions. We don't need to go into that in over detail, but we'll talk a little bit about what he stood for. And then we'll talk a little bit about where he was during the election. He must have been a super Trump supporter if he's getting this position. What's going on here? But, we heard a lot about Abrams. I remember him mostly because he got into a little bit of trouble. And he didn't believe that the Congress had the right to really have any oversight. And he got into trouble. He actually committed a crime and was convicted of misdemeanors. And it was serious enough they wanted to erase it from the books because he was pardoned. This was in 91, so George Bush was the president, but they were dealing with the Iran-Contra scandal, and but he wouldn't turn over materials. It wasn't called an outright lie, but he was resisting, and I think that it was a serious thing if you believe that the executive branch has a little bit of responsibility, to the Congress. Unfortunately, it's been shifting. Everything goes to the president, and it was normal, or I guess understandable why he assumed he didn't have to. But his slate is clean. It'll come up. The Democrats will use it. But I don't think that'll be the deciding factor. So I think, what he believes in is the big question, and that's where I think it's the most important thing.
And what did he get into trouble with Iran-Contra is that he is so enthusiastic over regime change, over manipulating governments, over changing things around, over U.S. intervention, that he's even willing to commit a crime to keep the U.S. regime change thing going. And this was in the 80s, of course, when the U.S. was supporting a lot of pretty unsavory characters. And John Negroponte, Otto Reich were very involved down there doing some pretty vicious things. And he was all for it, all in there.
Yeah, and of course, we're here now, and it looks like he'll probably be appointed. If there's some resistance, it might end up withdrawing him. I mean, that's always a possibility. But right now, we have to think about, well, how do you get appointed with this? I mean, we know he's a neocon. Nobody does it. The neocons are ecstatic over this. But Donald Trump, we don't volunteer and say, that Donald Trump is a neocon, but people are suggesting, why does he do things like this? And what's his position on this? So, but during the campaign, he was not just not a Trump supporter, he was anti-Trump. Nobody, anybody except Trump, it was totally negative on that. And even in the convention, he wanted to stop Trump. You'd think maybe that would send a signal that the two can't work together. But lo and behold, it looks like all that past stuff was just fanfare for the audience, and that's the American people, to think that, I stand up against him, but that's not so important now. So if I need this guy with experience, bring him in, because he will give credibility to the administration.
And I think we even have a quote, some words that, just so people don't think you're exaggerating, a quote that Elliott Abrams said during the campaign about Trump and Trump's abilities and possibilities. I don't know if we have it handy, but, as you say, he was very negative about Trump's possibilities. Well, here it is, yeah. The party has nominated someone who cannot win and should not be president of the United States. We anticipate a landslide defeat and then a struggle to take the party back from his team and his supporters and win the following presidential election.
All is forgiven, in politics. Well, it sort of fits my theme in politics. There's no difference between the parties, and it seems like the deep state always has an influence. The military-industrial complex has an influence. So what was the statement this week by Trump yesterday? That they were going to have a historic financial investment in the military. So they very much, and get along. So here it is. They can change their positions and accept it, and even if it contradicts everything that a lot of people thought Trump was on the other side of this. I mean, we wanted to believe, and of course we liked it when he was challenging NATO. But now the big challenge is what's going to happen with Abrams. What if he controls the foreign policy and deals with and has sort of control of the foreign policy dealing with Ukraine, because it invites the question, what happens to the softening stand that Trump, promoted with Russia? I mean, they're contradictory, and yet this recent meeting they had on this issue, 900 people attended just a couple of days ago, and they were all Europeans. It was a big meeting. They held this annually, and there's and they unanimously came down on the side, don't let those Russians expand into Europe. Of course, when did the expansion start of NATO into the borders of Russia?
The thing about someone like Abrams, and we should, again, be careful because it may not be him, but someone like him. Just the fact that his name is floated says they're looking in a direction that is in the swamp, not drain the swamp. But the thing about Abrams, he has never seen an intervention or an invasion that he didn't support on the U.S. side. And that is clear. And as you say, Trump said some things. I think it was December 1st. He said we need to stop overthrowing countries, stop telling people how to live in the rest of the world. Well, this guy, Abrams, made his entire career on this. And I can go through a few of them. He actually disagreed with John Bolton on Syria, believe it or not. But that's because Bolton didn't think it was a great idea to overthrow Assad right away. So he was more hardline than John Bolton. He wrote in the Washington Post in 2011 that Syria is a fake republic that is going to go down. He wanted the U.S. to recall its ambassador, which we did. He wanted us to ramp up the pressure, and he wanted President Obama to attack in 2013. He was deeply involved in the failed U.S. coup in Venezuela in 2002, very much involved in that. He was a senior director of the National Security Council for Democracy, Human Rights, and International Relations. In February 2011, he was urging President Obama to attack Libya, and he said that Gaddafi would meet the same fate as Saddam Hussein, which, as we know, happened. I mean, I won't go on too much further, but he condemned Russian aggression in Ukraine in 2014, writing for the Council on Foreign Relations. He's very, very, very much focused on Iran, however. That's a key thing for him. He wants to overthrow the government there.
You've convinced me. I'd be leery of this guy. But, Trump has come across as being less interventionist, no nation building, so he says. But how do people shift their policies? How could he even think about this? It's because the foreign policy, the excuse for the international intervention is the global war on terrorism. And there's terrorists every place. So he has the excuse to go any place, any time to fight terrorism. And it reminds me a little bit about, what empires used to be. Because the colonial age is essentially over. The Europeans have been kicked out of Africa and South America, no colonies anymore. But we have an empire, and at one time Philippines was a colony of ours, and we kept it for 50 years, and then we give them independence, but then we want to have control. So empires are built differently now, and so if they can shift their definition of building, taking over and changing the government. They can change the government of the country without controlling the whole thing. And I think that's what's happening, is that they still have an empire, but it is not involved in nation building itself. That turned out not to work so well. But I don't think for a minute that they're going to back off. And like we've said before on this program, that what they're after is there's a radical element of people who don't like us, and it's philosophically driven. And there's a lot of them, and they're scattered all around. It isn't like there's a command post and they have 10,000 warriors, and that is it. They're all over the place because it's a philosophic thing. And I use the analogy of communism. We didn't defeat communism by going out and saying we got to shoot and kill every communist in the world. And this is more or less what's happening. It's scatter shot. And this is why this shift away from no nation building, it looks like it's not going to matter because they want somebody in the State Department that will be much more aggressive and be willing to use the force. And Trump hasn't been bashful with that. Build. We really need a strong military because they're coming to attack us. And of course, that is part of the military and industrial establishment. One thing that annoyed me when he talked about really spending a lot of money, it's an investment. Yeah. That's not my definition in economics about what an investment is. This is a disinvestment. This is taking wealth and capital away from our country and throwing it down the drain and creating more enemies. That's why I think this is so negative, this whole policy, and why we so strongly oppose internationalism and intervention around the world.
You just said something that really struck me, and I hadn't thought of it that way before, but it is interesting. The global war on terror has removed the obligation to feel like you need to do nation building. Now you can just do nation destroying. You can just blow things up because it's about the global war on terror, not about promoting democracy or other things. So that's pretty.
But then maybe if they blow up too many bridges, they'll be pushing. Look at what you did to those bridges. Well, then we'll go rebuild them for them, and some construction company from the United States will go over there and make some money rebuilding the things that we did, that we destroyed.
But it makes you wonder. I mean, everything that Elliott Abrams has endorsed foreign policy-wise has been a disaster. Shouldn't that make someone question his judgment? You should theoretically have decent judgment to be in such a senior position in government.
You know what scares me is when I throw that question out to some people who are conspiratorial, which we are not, they'll say, well, they do it on purpose because they want to work for chaos. Maybe Soros wouldn't care. Some of these people like chaos and they want to replace it with something in their mind is much better, but it's only much worse. So this is what I worry about, that some people don't care. You remember the neocons would say we need a new Pearl Harbor event so that we can galvanize the people, that they know who the enemy is. And that's scary type of talk. And I think galvanizing the people is always important. And right now they have the bully pulpit, the whole thing, global war on terrorism, no nation building, and it's a great danger. If you don't support it, you're unpatriotic. The media 100% supports it. And here we struggle with others on the internet. I mean, there's more than just us out there trying to bring sense to this. And unfortunately, we don't get enough alliance with the left, but there are some progressives who would agree with everything we're saying here. They don't want the wars, and they're a little bit different. But they're out there, and they're being heard, and I'm convinced that when the people, no matter whether they're on the other side or our side, the people who have to fight and pay for the wars, they don't want this. But once it's driven, that there's a Hitler out there, and you have to destroy him. There's a monster to destroy, and if you don't do it, you don't love America. And we hear this all the time. Even when Trump, made that statement the other day that, and he said it was rather calmly. He wasn't in a demagogic mood. He said, there are a lot of killers out there, and we've done that too. Something of that sort. Oh. I mean, did you hear anything? I mean, he gave us this long interview, was that one sentence that he would actually suggest that maybe we did some dumb stuff, and that's why our job is so tough, is overcoming, the war propagandists, because there's a lot of them out there, and they do it in the name of patriotism, and that is tragic.
And of course, they conflate the American government with the American people. How could he denigrate the America? No, it's America. It's the government that's done these things. It's the state. That's
the big difference, the people and the government.
But they'll say that Elliott Abrams, he's so different from Trump. There's no way. But when it comes to something like Iran, they are in lockstep. Elliott Abrams agrees with Trump and with Mattis and with Flynn that Iran is the #1 sponsor of terrorism, which is.
Apparently, the clip is not playing, even though,
Saudi Arabia and Qatar and the other states.
They say this goes on, the debate goes on, and we win.
I've been having issues with the soundboard. Apparently, nothing was able to be heard last week, and hopefully you can hear my voice. I'm hoping the soundboard's not crapping out on me. Oh, sorry, okay. Well, if you were able to hear it or not, it looks like Elliot Abrams probably will get the State Department position. And a lot of it's due to, well, that the neocon progressives, well, he is one. And, you know, the more I see come out of the Trump administration, the more worried I am, because even though, you know, it seems like he's throwing bones to a lot of constitutionalists and libertarians on one hand, he's grabbing even more freedom out of the, you know, back pocket of those same people. And, you know, with the immigration issue, you know, I've said it before that I think this immigration issue needs to be fought mainly at the cause. And that's what the interventionism that America is doing in the Middle East. I think the longer we're there, the more enemies we inspire, not just, you know, through some of the, you know, op missions that are to destabilize countries, but just our military presence and the innocence that it continues to take. By being there, we've for so long, we've become a main target. The West has become the main target. Now, there's been this before, and we can look at history and see, you know, the West and the Middle East and how they fought before. We're not going to see any change, I don't believe, with this appointment, because, it's a neocon. And when you look at this tied to the immigration issue and the refugee issue, like I said, I want to, be a free country. I'm a libertarian. I'm supposed to believe in open borders, which I do believe in open borders. But with the involvement in the Middle East, and then the limitations and the propaganda used to fearmonger people, the ability for Americans to defend themselves in a lot of areas throughout this country has been limited. And we need to address those issues so that refugee and immigration issues are not an issue. I start looking deeper and deeper into this. I see, Elliot Abrams, and I'm thinking more war. And then I'm also going, and the refugee ban, well, they're probably preparing for even more refugees, meaning we're going to go to war. They want to have some type of rigorous. I started looking into it, and IBM. I have an article here from Fortune.com. IBM, whose CEO advises Trump calls for openness after immigration ban. So I'm going, okay, IBM, they're the ones doing all of the facial recognition and biometric crap in India. And so, I start looking at even a little bit deeper. And I'm finding articles from last year. And I see IBM retiree helps refugees find new life and new language in Germany. I'm like, Germany's having the big problem. And then June 30th, 2016, IBM joins White House call to action on global refugee crisis. Hold on, that was June. That means that was Obama. I go back even farther, and I find this from defenseone.com. And this one's titled, well, maybe if it loads. Refugee or terrorist? IBM thinks its software has the answer. Of course. A new tool to turn unstructured data into actionable intelligence could change the way law enforcement fights terrorism and challenge the data collection debate. And I start looking in deeper in this article, and says here, last October, as many European countries were straining to make room for Syrian refugees, other nations were shutting doors, saying that ISIS attackers might try to blend into the throngs. Our worldwide team, some of the folks in Europe, were getting feedback that there were some concerns that within these asylum-seeking populations. So we see that they are proposing they have the answer. And, of course, I'm not going to read everything I've already read through. I start looking even deeper and deeper. And of course, these are the ones, IBM, that wants to help do the national ID. You go to IBM.com and you go to their, they have a U.S. national ID data masking policy, and Canada national ID masking policy, Italy national ID masking, UK national, French national, Spain, and it goes on. And it really, hit me. This isn't about a national ID. Think of when they're talking about national ID, they're treating your nation basically the way we treat states here in the U.S. right now. So we thought, Trump's a nationalist. I hope he's not part of the new world order that it seems that might be playing out here, kind of right under the noses of most Americans. And we've known this stuff, and they were trying to push it under Republicans. We're seeing the same neocons pop up. It's all looking a little suspicious. Now, give me a second here. Now we also have, Trump threatening Iran with the sanctions and all that. Hopefully this will play. We are change what Donald Trump does not want you to know about Iran. Again, hopefully this plays.
The Super Bowl. What will I talk about? Lady Gaga? No, I refuse to. I want to talk about something important, something that everyone should understand, and that is the looming war that we're about to have with Iran. Now, this is a subject that has been ignored by alternative media, especially amongst the pro-Donald Trump echo chamber alternative media that refuses to talk about this for a very specific reason, because it shows a very troubling sign for Donald Trump. Now, as we're talking, since Donald Trump has been president, U.S. and Iranian relations have plummeted. And we are edging closer to war with that country, to the point where even Donald Trump's press secretary, Sean Spicer, falsely accused Iran of attacking U.S. naval vessels in a supposed act of war, fabricating information, lying to the American public, trying to provoke a response in order to allow the United States to invade that country, which is idiotic. Why Iran? This is a country that has been fighting ISIS inside of Syria, has been battling al-Qaeda on its northern border, and has been calling out Saudi Arabia for being the chief exporter of not only Wahhabism, but financially supporting extremist radical Islamic groups all over the frickin' world, including ISIS inside of Syria. But yet, Mathis, our defense secretary, called Iran the biggest state sponsor of terrorism. I guess he didn't read the 28 pages from the 9/11 report that were made public to the American people, showing how the Saudi Arabians were involved in 9/11. Now, why is this happening? Well, Saudi Arabia has an alliance with Israel, and they have made geopolitical decisions together against Iran because they hate Iran. Saudi Arabia hates Iran because they have another huge oil reserve that threatens their oil monopoly inside of the Middle East. And Israel hates Iran because they support the Palestinians. Now, as we know, the Iranians have supported Hezbollah, have supported the Palestinians, and of course that has angered the Israelis. But why did Donald Trump decide to put Iran on a travel ban list and not fricking Saudi Arabia? And now we have the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, saying that there should be new sanctions on Iran. And guess what? Donald Trump has just put new sanctions on Iran. Iran was just testing its missiles in their annual military exercise that the United States knew would take place, and they took advantage of this in order to show the world that this was a provocation. And now Donald Trump is launching new sanctions on Iran. Also, very important fact, Israel and Saudi Arabia have both supported radical Islamic terrorist groups inside of Syria to get rid of Bashar al-Assad. Just thought you should know that. And because of these new sanctions, Iran has dumped the U.S. petrodollar in a huge economic move. And with these sanctions, we have Donald Trump committing more economic warfare between these two countries as we're seeing it unfold in front of us, supposedly after this new missile test. And now Trump is tweeting that, quote, Iran is playing with fire and that he won't be as kind as Obama. His vice president, Pence, is warning Iran to supposedly think twice before testing this new Trump administration. And Iran is not backing down. Iran is saying we will fire roaring missiles at the enemies after this public Twitter spat between Iran and the United States. But what is Donald Trump doing? Because this makes no sense. This is an unwise foreign policy decision that is not meant to go after radical Islamic terrorism, but neoconservative goals that have been outlined and planned since George W. Bush took office, even before that, with the Project for a New American Century, which you should Google. Why is he following Hillary Clinton's doctrine? Hillary Clinton, who said she would invade Iran if she would become president. Former CIA director said we need to kill more Russians. What's next for Donald Trump? Flip-flopping on this major issue, not going after the root cause of terrorism, but creating a horrible situation within the Middle East, especially diplomatically, edging us closer to war. What's next? What, you were going to go after Russia? Oh, yeah. Yeah, they are. Trump's UN ambassador hit Russia hard in the United Nations, and we have Mike Pence saying that he is very troubled and he is watching Russia very closely with the latest developments happening inside of frickin' Ukraine. This is Bush, Obama, Hillary 3.0 unfolding right in front of us. And this is why we're not hearing any talk of this from the alternative pro-Donald Trump echo chamber alternative media, because it shows you how the new boss is just like the old boss. And it gets worse. Trump authorized 4 targeted killings in his first 10 days in office, and he's on pace to even defeat Obama on his own deposition matrix, on his own assassination program that he had. He also authorized a raid from Barack Obama's administration that they had planned that killed a U.S. Marine and an 8-year-old girl for what? In Yemen, which makes no sense at all. Again, I'm going to have this video in the description below so you could fully understand it. And the 7 countries that he put on a ban list are the same 7 countries that the Pentagon and U.S. government wanted to destroy and planned to destroy all the way back in 2002. So crap, this does not look good. This makes no sense as far as this unwise, irrational, unconstitutional foreign policy, pushing more aggression, more war, and not even solving the real threat of his radical Islamic terrorism, which he promised to do. So for me, Donald Trump might as well be called Barack Bush, since he's continuing the same dumb policies as the presidents before him, which he promised he wouldn't. So please, while the mainstream media talks about all the dumb things that they're attacking him on, while the alternative media ignores these facts, get it out there to the American people. Share this video if it resonates with you, because this stuff actually freaking matters. And that's why we are here doing the job that needs to be done, calling things out like they need to be called out, because we are beholden to the truth, because we are beholden to you on patreon.com/wearechange. It's your donations. It's your participation. It's you voting with your dollar that sustains this operation running independently of any coercion, of any control, of any manipulation, because at the end of the day, what you click on, what you support, what you share actually matters in this world. Subscribe, stay tuned. We're going to have a lot more hard-hitting news here on youtube.com/wearechange.
We Are Change, wearechange.org, and We Are Change on YouTube. Check them out and subscribe. Now, you know, what we're doing in the foreign sector, it's very typical, but how it will bleed into the domestic side of it could be completely backwards from what people were expecting. Now, you know, I explained how it can happen with the immigration, the refugee, national ID. Don't discriminate. We all need national ID, you know, that way we can keep track of people, make sure they're not terrorists. Now, there's a second fold. When we look at the education, we go, okay, yeah, we want it back to the states, which it should be. Really, it should be with the family, the parent, to decide, where they should or to homeschool, however they choose to educate their children. But take it out of the federal hands is a good thing. We don't want the federal government dictating the education because they tend to put the propaganda in there with it, which was kind of the intent of public school systems, federally controlled. But we also have a problem with the states doing the same thing. Now, under the Trump administration, do you think that the federal government will step in? It would have to make it to the Supreme Court before anything can be done. I think this type of stuff should be fast-tracked. If it's a constitutional thing, definitely when it comes to homeschooling, if a state decides they don't want homeschooling, I think that would go against freedom of choice, and a lot of times freedom of religion. Many people that can't afford to, send their kid to a private school, maybe a private Christian school, might want to homeschool for that reason. It's cheaper that way. Definitely for some parents, I know, people that have been able, they got remarried, and with what they were making and what their spouse was making, it was actually cheaper for one spouse to pick up one extra day in their house or the other spouse to stay home. Sorry, I had to wake up my dog. I'm dreaming down here. The thing about that is well, a state can also act as, in the same way the federal government does. They can use it for their own propaganda tool. So what I would rather see is a bill passed to, say, that the education of the child, whether it be homeschooling, public school or private school or charter school, this can be left up to the parent. Even though I really, really dislike the dictates that come out of the federal government, there's a lot of states that I also think are just as corrupt. Going after homeschool, there's states that will go after off the gridders, where you go up in places like Alaska, well, the natives and a lot of other, the white man, are up there living off the grid with a family. But in other states, in states that don't have the extreme weather conditions and the animals, you shouldn't live off the grid. That's dangerous for your kid. It's more about power and control and manipulation. Those states I would be most worried about. Now, what's going to happen, foreign-wise, I think is really being directed by neocons at this point, and we're going to see that we're going to kind of move ahead to a little bit more domestic news. There's one specifically I wanted to cover. And sorry, I'm trying to get everything pulled up here. Okay. And it wanted to freeze up here. Okay. Now, and again, it messes up. Sorry, guys. I literally just got my internet working again today after the whole northern Indiana kind of went down on the company I use. Apparently, a main wire got cut or something. I'm not sure. We had a bill here in Indiana aiming to protect Airbnb users failing. And I'm going to read one article here. Now, if you don't know what Airbnb is, it allows people to rent out their house using the app, and people can rent a house using the app. Well, here out of Indy Star, legislation that would have prevented local communities from banning Airbnb and similar services has failed at the Indiana General Assembly. And of course, that messed up on me. The House voted 49 to 44 in favor of House Bill 1133, meaning supporters failed to get the constitutional majority they needed in the 100-member chambers. So we have Airbnb. Basically, there's laws here in Indiana that tend not to favor your property rights, which, it's not abnormal. We know this problem happens, but Carmel, Indiana, basically tried to ban Airbnb, and it created a little bit of backlash. And now Santa Monica has also basically evicted it, Airbnb. And this is starting to happen nationwide, not only with them, but, your Ubers and stuff like that. Even though Uber has now gotten big enough that it's going to be a hard time kicking them out, they're trying to prevent others from doing this. Now, I've heard rumors that's because companies like Uber and some of the other even bigger ones than Airbnb are trying to create a monopoly. They want to kind of take over Airbnb's business. I think they're going to have a hard time because Airbnb has kind of gotten pretty big and is in multiple places. But at local levels, they've been able to use, ordinances to ban Airbnb. I don't think it's due to Uber or nothing like that. I really think this is just people trying to control what other people do with their own property. And I have a short clip here from Reason covering Santa Monica evicting Airbnb.
Beachfront views and iconic attractions draw more than 7 million tourists to the oceanside town of Santa Monica, California every year. If you want to stay in Santa Monica, you can book a room with a view at the Lowe's for $4.55 a night in early summer just before peak season. A bit further from the beach, you can lounge by the pool at the Viceroy for $3.50. Staying in Santa Monica wasn't cheap, but around 2008, something started happening in Santa Monica and other vacation towns across the country.
Belong anywhere with Airbnb.
Over the next several years, more than 1,600 Airbnb rentals popped up in the 8.3 square mile city of Santa Monica, with prices that easily undercut most hotels in the area. Sure, you wouldn't get room service or freshly cleaned robes, but the seaside community was suddenly more accessible to people traveling on a budget. And some Airbnb hosts were raking in some serious cash.
I was doing about $400,000 in revenue in my best full-time year.
Scott Chatford began renting his place on Airbnb after he was laid off and was shocked by how much money he was bringing in. He dove headfirst into the short-term rental business, signing several year-long leases and putting them up on Airbnb. He even created a brand producing books and podcasts about best practices for Airbnb hosts.
We are entrepreneurs. The difference between what long-term rental apartments cost and what the hotel down the street is charging, there's a huge gap there in a lot of places around the world.
Things seemed to be going well for Airbnbers like Shatford and their customers, but that all came to an end in the summer of 2015.
The city council made a big decision about websites like Airbnb in just a matter of seconds.
They claim is consuming the city's scarce real estate.
When do we want it? Now!
Santa Monica joined an ever-expanding list of local and state governments that had decided to crack down on home sharing, passing an ordinance essentially banning short-term rentals and forming a vacation rental enforcement task force. The city deployed its newly formed task force and ran a sting operation against Shatford.
Somebody at the city of Santa Monica actually had to book my property for my 4-night minimum stay, $1,200 reservation, just to get that rental contract, just to be able to go to court and prove that it was a short-term rental. I think they wanted to make an example on me is because I was a bit more in the public eye. I was vocal against how I thought that the regulation was unjust, how I thought that there was, potentially even, corruption in the city council.
Officials with the city of Santa Monica declined interview requests for this story. Records show that in the run-up to the Airbnb crackdown, several Santa Monica city council members took large campaign contributions from an interest group that advocates for the hotel industry, an interest group that happens to be run by a former city council member. Others took money from the city's powerful Renters' Rights interest group, which believes Airbnb is responsible for driving up rents. After the trial, Shatford paid his fine, packed up, and left town for the more Airbnb-friendly city of Denver, Colorado.
When my rentals went away, when I was treated the way I kind of was by the city, it definitely made me just kind of think about what else is out there.
What Scott is doing is creating wealth. He's bringing people into the city of Santa Monica who are going to spend money in the city. What the city of Santa Monica has done is destroyed wealth. They have attacked people for making profits, and they've driven out people like Scott, who found an opportunity to really offer a service to people that they otherwise wouldn't have been able to have.
Christina Sandifer is a lawyer with the Goldwater Institute in Arizona, a legal advocacy firm fighting to protect the property rights of people who rent out their homes. She says that the hostility towards home sharing is growing in cities across the United States.
Home sharing is something that is as old as our country. It's a centuries-old tradition. People have been opening their home to guests for generations, sometimes in exchange for money, sometimes in exchange for chores. The disturbing trend, however, is that because we've become so innovative, regulators now are deciding that they have to shut down home sharing, even though it's been around for centuries.
On the island of Kauai in Hawaii, you can be fined $10,000 for home sharing.
Bureaucrats in the islands of Hawaii are going out to the beaches and interrogating visitors.
Airbnb is at odds with its own hometown.
San Francisco and Anaheim have ordered Airbnb to scour its website for listings and turn homeowners over to the police.
Governor Cuomo signed into law an anti-home sharing bill that could allow everyday New Yorkers to be fined $7,500.
The entire state of New York has not only outlawed home sharing, but made even advertising your home on Airbnb or similar services a crime.
Probably the worst regulation that I have seen is in Chicago.
A fiery hearing at City Hall today over the new popular shared housing industry.
Chicago technically allows home sharing, but only under the condition that you be willing to share any information about any guest who books your home at any time for any reason without a warrant.
So whenever a Chicago official decides that he wants to come over my home, whether it be in the middle of the night or on a weekend, he can come in. He doesn't have to have a search warrant. He doesn't have to tell me what he's looking for. And he can do this every day of the week if he wants to. That is the most blatant privacy violation that I have ever heard of.
Back in Santa Monica, business is still booming for the big hotels. But by the city's own admission, the new regulations have outlawed more than 80% of Airbnb rentals. Just a couple miles south, though, budget travelers can still book an Airbnb in the beach town of Venice, at least for now.
Live in Venice, where some residents say their communities are being destroyed.
The American Hotel and Lodging Association commissioned the study and released the findings at a press conference today.
Reason TV, check them out. Reason TV on YouTube. Subscribe and reason.com. Now, again, this is happening everywhere, New York. But Indiana actually tried to. They had a bill out there. It made it to a certain point that was trying to protect the homeowners from these type of ordinances from local areas trying to tell homeowners they can't rent their or share their home. And then I also seen one, and this was in the Indianapolis Business Journal. I'm not going to read the article, but they're here in Indiana. A Zionsville entrepreneur plans Airbnb for tiny homes. And what I see good out of this is, like they said, you can find shares cheaper than a hotel. This makes traveling a little bit more accessible for lower income people that might not have the money to rent. In some places, a hotel for $100, $150 a night. Some places $80. Now, if they could, I'm just going to be there one night, we're going to look at some stuff and move on to another attraction. Pay me, $50. That, and then you think you have a big family. You want to, you're talking multiple rooms. The price can go up where you might be able to get that home, or you want a really nice place on the beach while you're paying for that. Well, you might be able to get an Airbnb home to rent for a lot cheaper. Now, I kind of want to cover something that I'm very, very much on the edge about. I'm on the fence about this one. And for the most part, I'm finding myself standing with the tribe on this. But I'm very much on the edge. I found this out at antimedia.org. It looks like it comes from Common Dreams. The Trump administration will be held accountable in court for its decision to grant the final easement on the Dakota Access Pipeline. Indigenous people and the environmental allies vowed Tuesday. Now, I'm for the indigenous people. I'm not for the leftist groups that are using this for their advantage. Because there's a lot of people out there that it doesn't matter if it was the indigenous people or if no one cared, if they had a chance to protest it, they would. I'm more for the indigenous Native Americans that are in that area, the Lakota for the most part. Says, and with actions planned nationwide on Wednesday, the administration won't get off in the court of public opinion either. The drinking water of millions of Americans is now at risk, said Dave Archambault II, chairman of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. Now, I do have kind of differing opinions on this. I've kind of looked at what they're doing. There is already a oil pipeline that is running through the river. This one, they are going deeper than ever under the river, according to the plans I've seen, that even a break wouldn't even more than likely ever, cause a problem in the river where the other pipeline definitely could. That doesn't mean it can't. And my problem comes with the broken treaties, and everything that our government has done to the Native Americans. And this is almost, to me, like a slap in the face. Following the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers announcement that it would give the official go-ahead within 24 hours, we are a sovereign nation and we will fight to protect our water and sacred places from the brazen private interests trying to push this pipeline through to benefit a few wealthy Americans with financial ties to the Trump administration. And I'm not going to read the rest of this article, but check it out. It's sitting over there at the antimedia.org, titled, "This is the hashtag no DAPL last stand, tribe to sue as actions planned nationwide." My problem comes with the complete disrespect that comes out of the government and these corporations doing this. There's something seriously wrong. I really believe that the reservations really need to become their own sovereign nation. And I really think that our government should have to interact with them in such of that way. We broke our treaties, everything that, you know, the Native American people definitely on the reservations had to put up with, and people like, well, they should just go, you know, become a part of society. Well, when they say that about a off-gridder, we tend to see a little bit different response. This is more about, you know, these people having their natural rights. And now I've heard conflicting reports, but I've seen enough evidence that there was so-called sites that had burial grounds, and you know what I initially heard is that archaeologists and other people had come in and decided there was nothing there. Then I came across some more evidence that there was something found. They had evidence, and when the Native Americans were putting in their court, the pipeline people moved ahead of schedule to clear the ground where that was before the court could ever put a stop to it. And that's where a lot of the violence first sparked out of. And again, I got to look at this as, you know, I want my freedoms respected, and we give them no freedom on their reservation. You can live on a reservation, but we're going to tell you no drinking on the reservation. We're going to tell you no weapons on the reservation. We're going to tell you, well, that's not their property then. They're in an internment camp. A reservation is basically a new word for internment camp in these type of situations. Well, we don't force them to be there. No, but if they want to stay on their, basically, if someone came to you, if you want to live in your home, you want to be on your property, when you're in your property, you can only do what I tell you to. But when you go out in public, you can be freer. But you know that's not true. You're supposed to be able to be the freest in your home. Well, for the Native Americans, a reservation is their tribal home. That's their land, that what little of it that they're allowed to have. And, you know, I could go on. And again, you know, I'm always on the fence about these things, because when it's private land, I believe that people have the right to do what they want, but there's also a moral ground that I look at what's going on, and I don't believe it's morally right. I don't support this company. I don't support from the evidence I've seen that this company has done enough to say, no, you're not going to build this pipeline. The way that everything has been handled, no, you can't put this pipeline in. And what I think pees me off the most is when you hear these politicians try to use the name of the Native Americans going, you know, look at their poverty, this will bring jobs. When we know that it might bring jobs for a generation, maybe two, but these type of jobs quickly leave too, leaving towns in, you know, disrepair, because if half of the town's an oil worker and that oil company pulls out, half of that town's jobless. there's a lot of issues surrounding this, but there's also some groups that I noticed out there that they're with the socialist groups that I believe the Native Americans should watch out for these groups because they will cause unrest and leaving you to deal with the consequences. What I did see too was veterans show up. And that also, made me reflect on some issues. And again, I see flaws in both sides, but I see more of a moral ground with the Native Americans. And that's basically where I'm going to leave that. Give me a second here. Now, I had an interesting one a clip here from AMTV Christopher Green, that this is something more in, I would believe, Jules' realm with the AI. And I'm going to play this and we'll get into a little bit of this AI here.
Holy shit balls! Are you the gatekeeper? You guys have seen Ghostbusters, right? AMTV, alternative media television. Come on. In all seriousness, let's have a conversation. Come into my private room here. Get off my desk. We're not sponsoring you. So I spoke with a fan. That's not the right word. Subscriber? No. Member? Friend? Yeah, I think that's more appropriate. He was telling me about living in a compassionate world. Do we have compassion in America? Are we a loving country? Is the world compassionate? Can we build a better world for all people? Create a utopia, so to speak, where, you know what, we take our humanity back. Screw these tech billionaires. Screw Google. Screw Facebook. Screw the machine, man. Screw the propaganda. Grab your blunt and let's sail ourselves away. And no, I'm not promoting that. I don't smoke pot, don't drink either, but it just sounded kind of funny. You ever heard of Jack Brusco? Am I saying your name correctly here? He's American futurist and self-described social engineer. Fresco is self-taught and has worked in a variety of positions related to industrial design. Also, and I think it's Jack. It might be Jackie. I don't know. I'm familiar with your picture, my friend. We're going to have to contact each other and speak a little bit more freely about all this. But Peter Joseph, I know most of you are familiar with. He is a filmmaker that produced, directed, wrote the film Zeitgeist, which when I saw it at the time, I was like, you know what? Really good film. Optimistic, but you're really just pitching us a utopia. And what are the chances of us ever living in a reality like that? Probably very slim. There's other ideas of this utopic new world, like the Venus Project, for example, beyond politics, poverty, and war. It's kind of interesting how it's a circle. It's a cyclical. What movie was that from? I don't know. One of you guys knows, but Can we build a better future? Now, it sounds like, at first glance, an impossibility. Like, how would we ever get to this? I mean, how are the real power brokers globally ever going to allow this? They're not. They need us to buy their shit. They need us to buy, to buy stupid plastic toys and widgets and propaganda brainwashing books. Like I just talked about this on demand. The little blue truck leads the way, and there's a literal freaking Illuminati eye in it. Here, I've got to show it again because some of you probably haven't seen that video. People don't believe me. I'm like, read your kid's children's book, before you actually read it to them, because it's total brainwashing and propaganda. Until a mother had to point this out to me. She was shocked. She threw it in the trash. I dug it out of the trash. I was like, hey, send me the book. So she sent it to me. Because the system is collapsing, because 50% or more jobs will be eradicated in the coming years, over the next decade, maybe more, because of artificial intelligence, because of this new technology, because these billionaires are buying thousands of acres in New Zealand, for example, and are essentially prepping themselves in nuclear fallout shelters. Because of all this, because society is radically changing, because they're voting in Switzerland, for example, about a universal income, how they're talking about this in Europe and the United States of America, because they're not going to need human workers anymore. Because of that, because there's that shift. I mean, this is I would say it's not even equivalent to the Industrial Revolution. It is, it's like it's on steroids. Because of these changes, it's opening up the potential and possibility for some of those utopic ideas to maybe potentially become reality in the future. This actually might be an opportunity for all of us, little people, all of us plebes and peasants, pushing papers around. Think about this is the biggest con job in the world. Think about most people's existence, for example. Like, most people have been convinced by society to get up in the morning and go do something they hate, to separate themselves from their family and then sit in traffic all day. And then they just go push papers around. So they can buy shit to impress people they don't even like. So I'm talking about a brand new world. Yeah, some people might call it utopic, but there's an opportunity here because it's a natural progression of man. Either that or they're just going to kill all of us. And I'm really serious about that. They're just going to kill it. Look, there's no need to pay us a universal income if all the jobs are taken by robots. That's another reason why Peter Thiel and others are buying all this real estate in New Zealand and Chile, thousands of acres of farmland, et cetera, because they know this. They know the little guys, you and I, are going to be coming after them, looking for them. Whether or not it's nuclear war, global conflict, it is social unrest, which we're already seeing, or it's the second coming of Christ. It's an inevitability. We are past the midnight hour of that doomsday clock. There's a reason why it's been popularized and why they've called us crackpot lunatics, but at the same time, they're prepping like crazy. They're dumping millions, if not billions of dollars into these kinds of things. So for the first time in my life, and in almost a decade of doing this, I'm actually seeing the utopic view as potentially even being a possibility if we realize it together. The Venus Project, the zeitgeist ideas, creating new societies, communities where we're working together. I mean, I'm open to challenging, establishment status quo. Even my own opinions and thoughts about capitalism and, how the world should work, et cetera. Think about this for a minute. Think about how we are moving from a ownership society to a society of use, right? We see this with even Silicon Valley startups like Airbnb. It's the share economy now. It's the rental economy, just like Netflix. Look at Netflix, for example. You're not buying the DVDs anymore. You don't own them, but the AI delivers it to you and you pay a subscription fee and you get all this value. And when you're done with it, you move on. There's a car service in San Francisco, for example, same thing. Car could be, I forget what it's called. Maybe some of you know, but you literally just check out your app and you can get into someone's car that's equipped to the app and use it to drive where you want to go and then drop it back off. It's a use-based society versus an ownership society. Now, why is this happening? Well, a couple of reasons. I think people's ideas of ownership and use and quality of life and all these things are changing, but also because millennials can't afford it. They don't have the money that the baby boomers have. They can't go out and mortgage themselves to the balls with, 2-3 cars in the garage and buy that, McMansion. They just can't do it. Access to credit, the market system is changing, et cetera. So Wall Street has to engineer something so that, again, they can keep you buying shit, but now I guess renting shit you don't really need. But the concept is changing. Things are shifting. Consciousness is rising. And I'm pretty excited about, talking to some of these individuals, and forgive me, maybe I pronounce some of your names wrong, but, I'm going to do that, especially if I don't know you in person yet. I've been getting, responding to a lot of emails from a lot of people. In fact, there's an interview I'll probably conduct, but you tell me if you want to see this gal on our program. I reached out to her. I'll give her a call. Let me log in here. Let's see. Looks like she's from Dash Digital Cash. She's Amanda B. Johnson. A supposed expert in the cryptocurrency world.
Dashes.com
and
is
Bitcoin.
launched and global, and we continue the up-down price roller coaster, but after each crash, we end up a little higher than we were before.
Okay. A little business-like there, Amanda. A little corporate. I don't know. What do you guys think? Should we bring her on or not? You guys decide. If you want me to bring her on, I will. Kind of cute. I don't know. Bring her on, maybe. Who knows? The point being, these ideas might be far more realistic than most of you think. If we don't start pushing the envelope of our own minds, which is only really truly limited by our imagination, we will die as a species. We will fall off that edge of a cliff. There is a reason people like Elon Musk and others and these futurists are pushing for space travel, are pushing to go to Mars, for example, and to colonize other parts of the universe. There's a reason Stephen Hawking is telling us that AI will potentially destroy humanity, that it's the biggest threat to our existence. There's a reason for all these things that are happening, and it's so much bigger than just delivering the news to you guys on a silver platter every day. Like, oh, here's a story. Yeah, the tech billionaires are, building fallout shelters. Yes, there's a coup going on in Washington, D.C. They're trying to take out Donald Trump. It's so much bigger than that. It's about humanity and having a different vision for the future and helping to build a community that is rich, real, honest, and authentic. And the bottom line is I can't build it without you guys. We need to be more proactive in sharing ideas. One way you can do it is our own community on demand. Check out our forums. The forums are free. Join us in the forum. Just come on and have a conversation. I'm going to be doing live Q&As. Let me show you guys this too. If you're not already aware, go to our website, amtvmedia.com. Right now, I need moderators too. So if you want to get involved, that's one way you can get involved for free and help us. Go to the forum section here at amtvmedia.com. People are already posting. We just launched this. Here's our general section. We can set up all kinds of different sections. Get the discussion going. Let's extrapolate on these ideas. Help us build the community. Make friends with their life.
And again, that was AMTV, Christopher Green. Now, and Amanda Johnson, B. Johnson, that, if you don't know, that's Amanda Billy Rock. So if he really knew who that was, maybe he wouldn't question whether to bring them on or not. But this out of The Guardian about AI that really got my attention too when it comes to AI was real life CSI, Google's new AI system. Sorry, give me a second. Unscrambles pixelated faces. Company reveals technology capable of increasing picture resolution 16-fold, effectively restoring lost data, but results still an educated guess, which I've seen the photos that they showed where the face might be just a tad different, but really it takes a completely pixelated face and gives you a couple, options of what it should look like, and all of them look similar, just a little bit off. So it would work. Breaking news: Sessions confirms Senate approves Trump's Attorney General. It says here, Google's neural networks have achieved the dream of CSI viewers everywhere. The company has revealed a new AI system capable of enhancing an 8-pixel square image, increasing the resolution 16-fold, and effectively restoring lost data. The neural network could be used to increase the resolution of blurred or pixelated faces in a way previously thought impossible. A similar system was demonstrated for enhancing images of bedrooms, again creating a 32 by 32 pixel image from an 8 by 8 one. Google's researchers described the neural network as hallucinating. That's what really got me. It's like what? Well, it's because they like to break code, basically. The system was trained by being shown innumerable images of faces so that it learns typical facial features. A second portion of the system, meanwhile, focuses on comparing 8 by 8 pixel images with all the possible 32 by 32 pixel images they could be shrunken versions of. The two networks working in harmony effectively redraw their best guess of what the original facial image should be. The system allows for a huge improvement over old-fashioned methods of upsampling, where an older system might simply look at a block of red in the middle of a face, make it 16 times bigger, and blur the edges. Google's system is capable of recognizing it is likely to be a pair of lips and draw the image accordingly. And if you go to The Guardian and read this article, they show, unpixelated pictures and the possibilities that it could be. And if you look at it, they're going to be able to get pretty close on most things. Of course, the system isn't capable of magic. While it can make educated guesses based on knowledge of what faces generally look like, it sometimes won't have enough information to redraw a face that is recognizably the same person as the original image, and sometimes it just plain screws up, creating inhuman monstrosities. Nonetheless, the system works well enough to fool people around 10% of the time for images of faces. Running the same system on pictures of bedrooms is even better. The test subjects were unable to correctly pick the original image. Almost 30% of the time, a score of 50% would indicate the system was creating images indistinguishable from reality. Although this system exists at the extreme end of image manipulation, neural networks have also presented promising results for more conventional compression purposes. In January, Google announced it would use a machine learning-based approach to compress images on Google Plus fourfold, saving users bandwidth by limiting the amount of information that needs to be sent. The system then makes the same sort of educated guess about what the information lies between the pixels to increase the resolution of the final picture. And, you know, I really haven't kept up with AI and the robots for a while because really it's already to a point that it's getting unbelievable. And what's going to be in our future is basically going to be based on what we allow to happen, because the things they're creating are being used by companies and governments and also being put into your home. They're becoming gatekeepers of your privacy, except they're not gatekeeping. They're selling to the highest bidder, whether that be other corporations, insurance corporations, or government entities. They have your information and they can sell it. Definitely if you don't read terms, which anymore they make them basically unreadable to the everyday person. Sorry, guys. Having an issue again. Okay. Now, kind of move on here. I had one out of CNBC. If Trump and Congress botch tax cuts, GOP could lose House. Republican Steve Forbes warns. President Donald Trump and House Republicans need to get their promised pro-growth agenda moving. Two-time GOP presidential candidate Steve Forbes told CNBC on Wednesday, if they botch this thing on taxes, Republicans could lose control of the House in the 2018 midterm elections, Forbes warned. Excuse me. Putting Trump in the tough spot of having to work with Democrats who have not been shy at showing their disdain for the president. I think Trump realizes if this economy doesn't grow, his presidency is finished, would be seen as a failure, the chairman and editor-in-chief of Forbes Media said on Squawk Box. That's why I think he needs to move fast on the tax cuts, get things moving. Forbes said Trump has gone after the low-hanging fruit of bracing companies to move manufacturing back to U.S. and signing executive orders to get the ball rolling on reversing Obama administration regulations in energy and banking. Now Trump has got to deliver on the big stuff, said Forbes, who unsuccessfully ran for the GOP presidential nomination in 96 and in 2000. Even if they pass the tax cut late in the year, if they make it retroactive to January 1st, that would cover a lot of sins, said Forbes, a longtime champion of a flat tax to apply a consistent rate across all brackets. Forbes was also adamant that House Republicans should drop the border adjustment to tax imports as part of the broader package to reform corporate taxes. He said the border provision would cost Americans $1 trillion over 10 years as importers raise prices to offset the tax. Again, that was out of CNBC. And tax cuts. How about no taxes? Well, we're probably not going to get that, but the whole tax law is so screwed up. And if you're a single male with no children, in your 30s or whatever, or late 20s, basically after you're 18, if you're a single male with no kids, let's say you make, I don't know, $25,000 a year. Again, single male, no kids. Probably, maybe by choice, you decided I didn't want to have kids until I'm doing well off for myself. Or you broke up, just haven't had any kids. Single male makes around 25, pays in around $3,000 worth of taxes to federal government, and that might be Medicare, Social Security, federal tax. Pays in all this money, $3,000, gets maybe $1,000 back. Now let's say that person is in a higher up position at a job, and he's making that money, pays in $3-4 grand, gets about $1,000 back. Then he has young guys that are coming in working for him, and they're making $20,000 maybe, or $19,000. They're young, teens in their early 20s. They goof off. Maybe some of them, have 1 or 2 kids already. Maybe not, a whole bunch of, they're still young, kind of not fully responsible because, they still haven't learned a lot of life lessons. Goof off, late to work every once in a while. Might be why they made, $18,000 instead of $20,000. They pay in, $2,000 into taxes. They get $6,000 back. That's our tax code. I see it happen all the time. That single person that might have been responsible decided they weren't going to, just go out and make babies. They were trying to think responsible about life, are now paying for the irresponsible people. And this is something that I personally have seen. Not once, not twice, all the time. I see people that have worked their butt off to get to a position. But because they worked their butt off, they knew they didn't want to have a kid right away. They wanted to work their way up, and they knew they would have to work long hours. They did this. thinking about it. Or the other people that go party all the time, dropping their kids off at other people's place, come in late to work, pay less than the taxes because, well, they got sometimes 3 or 4 kids before they're, 23, or they're around 23. And they really haven't led a responsible life. They've kind of been free for all. They get more than taxes, and then find out they're also on, their girl is getting food stamps. It's just so much of that's been going on. I've been watching a lot of people literally start reaching breaking points where they're like, this tax season, they're flipping out on people. Oh, I'm going to get this much. Shut up. I don't want to, F in here. Like, people are getting tired of it. Because, it goes back to that welfare state. Same thing that incentivizes immigrants to rush in America because they'll get free stuff. I had talked to someone that I had met that, they're reformed people, and I have nothing against them. What I have against is what our government does. And this person happened to be a business owner. Find out that they were able to get all kinds of grants and loans because of, I don't even remember offhand right now because this was a couple of years ago, but they literally were able to get free money to open up a business because they were foreign. I'm not sure how all that works. I don't understand all of it, but it was just amazing when the person was telling me what they had to do to be able to get the money to open their business. I'm like, and I would never get that opportunity. Well, we have CNBC. Intel is to invest $7 billion in factory in Arizona and employ 3,000 people. Woohoo, a whole 3,000 people. $7 billion, yeah, that's good, but I'm not seeing anything helping the little business owner, the little man that's an entrepreneur that wants to become the business owner. Everything I'm seeing is to keep big business and the worker bee jobs around. And I've said this before, we're not going to be able to sustain that anymore. I hope that, the jobs we have stay. I hope some more come back. I hope that we invest, but I also want to see the ability for people that I know are way smarter than what they're basically allowed to do because of regulations and stuff. And we'll see if this Trump administration actually starts, bringing back regulations that help the small man, not the big corporate and banksters and Wall Street. I don't think it'll happen. I think he's surrounding himself by people that, well, they're part of the establishment. Happy with his Supreme Court pick. Hesitant about the education and a lot of the other positions I'm not too enthusiastic about. Okay, I see we are coming up to end broadcast here. Got what, 10 minutes left? Okay. We're seeing a lot of unrest here in America that's not backing down. I wish I would have seen this during Obama's presidency, because it was much deserved then as it is now under Trump. But where were they? These people want us to take them serious, but they weren't there when their guy was doing a lot of the same things. And I think that's where they lose. They lose the American people. They lose the fight because they weren't there to fight for those same things when it was their guy. When their guy would, pat their back every once in a while, they weren't going to stand up. And a lot of these people really don't even know what they're standing up for. And that's the problem. Because if they knew what they were standing up for, if they truly understood, the issues that some of them might call up and say that's what everybody's protesting about, they would have been there under Obama. But those people that understand, or, so-called understand what they're marching about, they're the ones provoking the others. Because those ones that know would have been there when Obama was in office. The other people are just followers. We have a lot of confused youth in this country that are just following whatever is trendy. That trendy has gone beyond what it was when I was in high school and when I was in college. And it's not that I didn't see any of it then, but it wasn't the populist thing among the youth. I think something that I hope to see is with the new Secretary of Education. I'm hoping to see homeschooling rights stood up for. I think that's one important thing that would set her apart from the establishment. Would say, it'll be states' rights. But states have to respect the freedom of choice when it comes to education for homeschooling, private schooling, charter schools, and public schools. Set the boundaries that we're open to, teaching methods and, different ways of doing things. We're not going to set your agenda for you. You have that choice. But you have to give that freedom of choice to the people of the state, not just the state. Because if you give the freedom to the state but don't respect the freedom of the people within that state, then you're not constitutional. That is when the federal government's supposed to step in, going, hold on. You say this person is allowed to go to public school, private school, but they can't be homeschooled? That's not right. And I think that both sides should be happy if that happens. Both sides, no matter Republican, Democrat, whatever. Everybody should be happy if that happens. Because it allows you to steer your children in what you believe is morally right. even if I disagree with what you believe. Because, again, you would probably, if I'm disagreeing with what you believe, you might be disagreeing with what I believe. But if I'm not trying to dictate to you, don't dictate to me. But what I like to do is I like to look at the facts of history. And, you know, with Black History Month and all that, Glenn Beck has actually been putting out these shows called His Story and one called The Vault. And he put out two. One, His Story, it's just spelled history, but His Story, and A Vault that has to do with blacks in America, you know, before and during and after the Civil War. And what I respect about him is he's been preserving a lot of this information that otherwise would be lost. A lot of it showing that what's being taught in our schools is not anywhere based on fact. And a lot of times, actually, it's the opposite. And I would urge people to go check that out. I think he puts those up for free on glennbeck.com. But our history, it's been construed one way, which is half facts, to propagate, you know, this nationalism. And then we've also had it construed the other way with half facts to make it look like America is the greatest evil on earth. And really, those half truths, when you bring them together, you see a flawed nation that at one point was trying to work towards freedom, not only for the white man, but for the black man. When we're told about the first black congressman, we're not taught about the ones after the Civil War. There's so much of history that they after the Civil War, you know, a black pastor with his choir led some 2-hour, you know, prayer thing in Congress. You know, none of this is talked about in history books, and Glenn Beck has collected a lot of artifacts and historical things that show the reality of what was going on. And then it also shows why it might have, why it might have been erased from history. And maybe you might want to look into Wilson a little bit more, President Wilson. We are at the end of the broadcast. I want to urge everybody to go to ucy.tv. Scroll down to the bottom, click that Amazon button, takes you to Amazon, and it gives you the same great deal, same great prices. Nothing changes except for the fact that UCY gets a little kickback to help cover operating costs. One of the ways to help support ucy.tv and the network, at the same time, you know, shopping like you normally would do on Amazon. And yeah, again, same great price, same great shipping. And don't forget to go to antityrannynews.com/metal